name is Caitlin. I'm a physical therapist and biomechanical specialist working out of Build Sports Performance Lab in Louisville, Colorado. Today I'm going to be talking to you all about bike fitting. Getting a professional bike fit is one of the most important investments you can make in terms of your comfort and performance on the bike. It's really important to go to a fitter who understands the human body, a fitter who can analyze your movement patterns on and off the bike and assess your body's mobility, flexibility, and strength. So when it comes to bike fitting, as you can see, the bike is a perfectly symmetrical machine with specific changes and adjustments that you can make to it. When it comes to the human body, we tend to be not so perfect and precise. So as a result, sometimes asking an asymmetrical body to pedal a symmetrical machine can lead to a lot of issues down the road. So while it's important to address the human body and how it can improve in order to pedal this machine, there are also specific things you can think about in terms of your fit on the bike. So today I'm going to be giving you all 5 tips to consider when it comes to fitting yourself on a bike. Tip 1, saddle type. So there are a variety of different brands and different styles of saddles to fit on a bike, and it depends on what kind of bike you're riding. The saddles can vary between road bikes, time trial bikes, mountain bikes. It's really important to find a saddle that fits your body that's going to be comfortable for you. So in terms of road bike saddles, there are a variety of different types of models, some with wide flare, some with special gel support in the middle. It's really important to find a saddle that is the correct width for you. So typically saddles are supposed to be wider than your actual sit bones. Saddle flare is another thing to consider as well. Some saddles have a little bit of flare up at the edge. They kind of dip down and then come up and flare at the nose, while as others might be completely flat. Saddle padding depth too is another thing to consider, and depending on what kind of rider you are, you may want more or less padding. In terms of saddles for a time trial or a triathlon bike, they tend to be a little different than a road saddle, and that will allow you to kind of roll forward onto your pubic bone so that you can be more forward in the saddle and onto the front cockpit. Number 2, saddle positioning. So when considering saddle position, we consider saddle height as well as saddle fore and aft, or how far forward or backward the saddle is. You want to think about how that's going to affect your reach to the handlebars, as well as affect your knee position with the end of your crank arm. A saddle that's positioned forward is going to engage more of your anterior chain, so think quadriceps. That's kind of the appropriate position for a time trial bike. Whereas a saddle positioned more aft or backwards is going to engage more posterior chain, so think glutes, hamstrings. The second thing to consider with saddle positioning is saddle tilt, so how nose up or nose down the saddle is. A saddle that's too nose down can end up throwing your center of mass forward onto your handlebars and put a lot of stress on hands. So if you've ever had numb hands, that could be a culprit. A saddle that's too nose up can place undue stress on the frontal region and the groin, especially if you like to get low on the front end or even into your drops. Number 3, cleat positioning. Changes to your cleats can affect both your step width, so how far your feet are from the frame. They can affect your foot inclination angle, both at the top and bottom of the pedal stroke, and they can also affect your knee angle at the top and bottom of the pedal stroke. A cleat positioned too far forward can cause what we call hot foot, so numbness on the top or bottom of the foot, and it can also cause or magnify motions that occur, extraneous motions that occur at the ankle throughout the pedal stroke. A cleat positioned too far back is going to actually lengthen or extend the knee at the bottom of the pedal stroke and bring the knee position a little bit further back. Most cleats can also be angled in and out, and you always want to think about kind of how the rider stands statically. Some people naturally have more external rotation either in their hips or their tibias. And so for those riders, it could be kind of disadvantageous to place them neutrally, because as a result, that would bring their knees a little bit further in and kind of not make the pedal stroke as natural for them. Number 4. So while saddle positioning is going to have the biggest effect on your reach to the handlebars, there's only so far the saddle can move forward and back. So in that case, the reach still isn't quite right, then we want to consider different stem length options. Reach is going to depend a lot on the type of rider and the type of position they want to have on the bike. If it's someone who is an elite racer, they're competitive, they're looking to be more aerodynamic, then having more bend from the hips and into the back is going to be appropriate for them. Whereas someone who is more of a leisurely rider, someone who just likes to commute on their bike, they don't need to have as far of a reach. Number 4 kind of leads or segues into my 5th point that is more geared towards triathlon or time trial style bikes. So as you can see, the front cockpit is pretty different than a road bike. You have your bull horns here as well as your elbow pads and aero bars. So when you're considering reach on a time trial bike, you need to look at both how that's affecting the rider when they're out of the aero bars and how it's affecting them when they're in. So in terms of positioning for that front cockpit on a time trial bike, I like to have a nice relaxed elbow to shoulder to hip angle. So I kind of look somewhere between the 80 to 90 degrees. A rider that's a little bit more extended up front is gonna have a problem of having to always kind of pull themselves down and back, which is gonna do a lot of engagement onto like the lats and triceps. A rider that's a little bit too far forward, so their elbows are a little too far back, is constantly gonna be pushing up and putting a lot of undue stress on those deltoids. Another thing to consider with the front cockpit is kind of the angle of the bars, and there are a variety of different styles of aero bars you can get, some with a lot of flare or a lot of tilt or angle, and some that are completely flat. Aero bars that have more of a bend or an angle in them are also going to bring the arms a little bit more forward, which is actually proven to be more aerodynamic than the arms or than the hands further down. And that can also release a lot of tension in the shoulders too. The last thing to consider with a time trial bike fitting is the stack height of the bars. I see a lot with beginner riders, both time trial and triathlon. So they see a lot of pictures of the pros jacking themselves super low in the front, and that's the position that they want. However, if it's a new position for them, typically their spine and their neck are going to have the most problem adjusting to that. So for beginner riders, I tend to bring them up just a little bit more so that over time their body can mold to that position and become more comfortable. If you're jacked too down low in the front, doesn't matter how aerodynamic the position is, if you're uncomfortable 30 minutes in and you're constantly getting out of your bars onto your hoods, you're not going to be aerodynamic anyway. So there you have it. Those are my 5 tips for bike fitting. As always, there's a lot more that can go into a professional bike fit. Comment below or shoot me a DM if you have any other additional questions about bike fitting or how a physical therapist can help improve your fit on the bike.